And our guest is Mike Zuzolo, Global Commodity Analytics and Consulting from Atchison. And Mike is here to kind of talk about what's going on in these commodity markets, looking at maybe some opportunities for the rest of the year. And Mike, just a few days ago, the planting report came out, the planted acreage report, and had with it a few surprises, but overall it still showed Kansas farmers and really the U.S. farmers really got after it. And let's kind of break down those commodities. And we can start with corn, but maybe give some of your overall observations of what you saw from that report and what it means moving forward.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, Ken. It's nice to be with you again. I think the biggest thing that I realized after the acreage report is now the weather matters. We're essentially going from a 4 billion bushel carryover potential down to a sub 2 billion bushel carryover potential, depending on the next 10 days of our rainfall in terms of the pattern and the heat that we're seeing, the potential migrating from the west to the east, and a lot of potential losses east of the Mississippi River. It's not all about Kansas and Nebraska and the Dakotas this year. There's a lot of tough spots in central and eastern Corn Belt as well. So the acreage report was able to bring and resurrect the weather market and the potential for a corn pollination weather market that we have yet to determine what that supply is going to be. And I think the listeners and the viewers need to really keep that in mind, because Friday we'll get that new WASDE report, and the trade estimates are still way high, up there at 179 bushel yield average for corn and near 50 bushel yield for beans. Those numbers may be completely useless by the time we get to Friday afternoon if the rains don't come as advertised on the GFS model. Maybe the biggest thing that I also realized after that acreage report was the idea that Brazil being 90% sold on beans, Argentina maybe being out of corn, these things matter. China coming in and buying corn this week, Mexico coming in and buying corn this week. We may be getting to a point now, because of the supply issues USDA brought on that acreage report, that the COVID is coming in on major importers in Asia and Latin America and saying, hey, we better stockpile a little bit here in case we have a COVID resurgence. So we could actually have a demand bump from a result of the COVID resurgence, which is kind of counterintuitive, but we wouldn't have had that kind of mindset had not USDA cut those supplies so much.
Soybeans, another story, at least in Kansas, could be a record crop, but in other areas, we saw a slight reduction in acres and more corn acres.
Yeah, and this is where I think 2012 becomes a real focal point for me and my clients and subscribers that I work with. Is we're about half the price right now in December corn, and I'm not sure if we're half the price in November beans. I forgot to look, but we're half the price. We're almost $7 a bushel in D's corn at this same time period in early mid-July back in 2012, because the crop conditions were 40% good to excellent, as opposed to 71% for both corn and beans. This, again, could be a real surprise to the trade. If we miss some of these rains that are absolutely crucial on both sides of the Corn Belt, then the beans could easily, I think, follow along in percentage gains terms with the corn. And I say that, Ken, even though the USDA Ag Attaché just came out a day or so ago and really sliced apart the Chinese bean import number that the USDA is using. I think they went down to 90 million tons, and USDA was using a 94 or 96 million ton number, depending on which marketing year you're looking at. So I think the U.S.-China trade frictions, along with the African swine fever still being an issue in China, has really hurt the ability of the Chinese to come in and actually buy into the market as much as they should have based upon that phase one trade deal. I was looking at some statistics before we went on the air, and Peterson Institute has about $3.5 billion, I believe it is. 5.4 billion is what they have bought from us in China in ag exports in dollar terms, and the commitment is around 33.4 billion. So they're way far behind, and I'm nervous they're not going to make that up in the soybeans. So I'm still, like we talked, I think last time, I'm still real nervous about beans carrying too big of a premium, and I want to hedge those first.
Mike Zuzolo, Global Commodity Analytics and Consulting in Atchison, is our guest. We're going to take a break, and we'll talk wheat when we return.